Absolutely, brother. That definitely helps because I remember when I first got started in this about 8 years ago. For the first, what, 2 or 3 years, I was bouncing around going like crazy. I was pretty much the Tasmanian devil, having no idea which direction I was going. And then 2020 hit, COVID hit, and this guy by the name of Michael Faber was on Facebook, and I had no idea what Unleashing Now was all about. Jumped on a phone call with the guy. I think it lasted about a minute to a minute and a half because for those who know him, he doesn't talk a whole lot when he's on the phone, right? And, I was like, okay, I guess that's not going to work. And here we are 6 years later. And uh, by that point, I had no idea. I didn't know how to run a business. I watched my father build his business. And, at that time, Austin was running his construction business. And so I was listening to two different people, but I was trying to build something completely different than what they were used to. And when I connected with Michael and started actually listening and following his guidance, was when everything changed. And that's where the legacy can start being built in the foundations and the pillars when you're building up the structure of the business. Because, in my view, with what we're building here with NBM, and if something happens to me tomorrow or next week or in the year to come, because there was a friend that told me I'm like a cat and I've already used up like 6 or 7 lives with the stuff that's happened over the last 4 or 5 years. I want everything in place so that if something happens, Austin can continue the mission of NBM. And when you spoke on that, that was really powerful and incredible. So thank you for joining the movement here. Really
Absolutely.
appreciate you, and thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And I'll say one last thing.
Of course.
I think everybody needs a coach. I have a coach. Tom Brady had a coach, right? Somebody see their blind spots. Everybody, I think, is probably the best investment you can ever make for anybody. So with that, I said, and then again, thank you. Thanks, Dave. I appreciate you. And looking forward to everybody else crushing it
You're
next two
very
days.
welcome. And I agree with that. Every best quarterback, in my opinion, it ain't Tom Brady. It's Peyton Manning, in my opinion,
Of course.
and John Elway. They had coaches when they were kids and in the NFL, so they only became great because of the guidance that they had growing up and through the NFL. So, yeah, sorry, Sierra, I'm not saying that. They did get their butts kicked in the Super Bowl. So, sorry about that, Kevin. Anyways, absolutely incredible beginning part of today. We are, crushing this. Every speaker, men, women, have opened up their hearts and shared why they wanted to get into the entrepreneurial world, why they wanted to start sharing and opening up and healing from losing someone in their life. We heard from Ashley from other summits and today about overcoming trauma. And I know from previous summits with Ashley, it was her relationship with her grandmother. Austin, he was sharing stories from his first time sharing with the family, his relationship with his dad, who we lost. I think it was 3 or 4 years ago. I could be wrong on the timing. It was my experience with losing my brother, and Tish with losing 15 relationships in her own family. And, when you lose somebody or several people over the years, it takes a piece of your heart with them. And one of the biggest pieces that I always talk on and touch on is you don't want to stay stuck. And I knew instantly when Joe passed away that I didn't want his loss to mean nothing. I knew that in my family alone, that his memory would live on within the Vrablik family and the Hopkins family and the Smith family, because my cousins, my parents, my aunt and uncles, and the kids, we would always talk about the memories of what Joey, JT, as everybody called him, because he and my father shared the same name, that his memory would live on through the family. But deep down, I knew that he had such a big impact outside of the family through the Ironman organization by finishing 14 Ironman races so that he could get selected through the legacy program to compete for number 15, which sadly he can never complete in. But I knew that Joe's legacy couldn't just stay within the walls of the Vrablik, Hopkins, and Smith family. It needed to get outside of those three families, because there were other families that were impacted by his life. We're going to have a speaker that have been on this summit from the very beginning, back in February of last year, May Scott, who has knew Joey over 20 years ago. And the only way I met May was because she lived next door to Joe here up in Boulder, Colorado. And that's how we met and stayed friends ever since. There were other friends that I knew that came to the Celebration of Life game that Austin got to attend when we rented a suite at the Rockies game, where the Rockies paid tribute to Joey, where we had over 40 people from family and friends that we watched the Rockies play, because that Joey loved baseball. And in that moment, I remember sitting in the front row of the suite by myself, and I don't know who took the picture, but this was before the beard. I even think I had blonde highlights. I don't remember. I went through a phase. I was only 35, who knows. But I remember sitting there, and someone captured this picture. And it was just me with 23 on the back of my jersey, because at that time Jason Giambi was on the Rockies, and maybe he was retired by then, I don't remember, and it was my last name. I remember sitting there looking out at the field, and at that time we had season tickets since 2010. And I gave up the Rockies tickets because it was too painful to go back to the Rockies games because of all the memories. But I remember sitting there looking out at the field, remembering all of the amazing games that we got to go to over the years with friends, our parents, our wives at the time, even the Game 4 of the World Series, which in that miracle season, the Rockies actually made the World Series. I know nobody believes me because it's been so many years, right? But all those memories came flooding back. And in that moment, that's when I decided that I needed to do something that needed to echo for years to come, and even after my time here on Earth is over. And that's when this movement became a reality. And it took two very good friends of mine to pretty much kick me in the butt and say, you're avoiding where you need to go. You're avoiding who you are destined to help. And I'm truly grateful for those two friends who are on the Zoom call, who's on the Zoom calls with us today, because I finally was able to tap into that and take that on, because I was running away from this service, this where I'm meant to be, because it was too painful at that time in my life. You see, Joey was more than just my big brother. He was my best friend and is my best friend. He's my guardian, even from heaven. And that's why I needed to decide, am I going to stay stuck in the shit, as Amber would say? Or am I going to get unstuck? And you know what? After the last year, reflecting back last night when I was sitting in my recliner, taking a little bit of a break and attempting to get some sleep after I went to bed. I didn't get much sleep because I was too pumped up. I'm truly grateful for what this last year has unfolded in front of all of us. You know, I said at the beginning of the day today, I was selfish when I built New Beginnings. I built it for me because I needed something to be able to heal from the loss of Joey. Because if I didn't have something to focus on, I may have gone in another direction. And now, this mountain is not for me, it's for all of you. It's for you to come into a place where you can feel safe, where you can talk about the ones that you have lost, and talk about stories like Kevin shared with us when that riot occurred in that maximum prison. And there are going to be many more stories that's going to come down the line that I've already heard that's going to rock your socks, just like all these speakers that have come before. This space is a place where when others have already moved on that haven't been related to the ones we've lost and may be uncomfortable when you bring them up, this place, this summit, this base camp, as we continue the ascension to the summit, is a place where we want to hear those stories. We want to see the emotions. We want to see the breakthroughs and the wins because we don't want the pain or the fear to hold you back. We want to see the breakthroughs. We want to see you climb and not be in the shadow of the mountain. So thank you to all of the amazing speakers before Kevin, everybody. Thank you all for pouring into the community. Thank you all to our amazing sponsors that have been so generous into pouring into our family. We are going to go into our next speaker, who I always love sharing this story because this was a moment back in 2025 when I was at Movement Maker Live and we were at the movies party. I got that right this time, Michael. It was the movies party, not a Halloween party. I don't know why I said Halloween. But we were there, and Austin, Joe, and I were talking to a new friend, Elisa Jane Buss, and for some reason there was a song that popped on, and it was a song that reminded me of Joey. And the emotion hit. And, you know, there are times that I can handle it. You know, I can go into a room and listen to Africa by Toto and I'm fine. And I'll just start jamming out. And sometimes Austin, when I go visit him and the boys, that song will turn on and I'll start singing at the top of my lungs and the boys plug their ears and Austin starts laughing, crying because he goes, I'm going deaf and I'm going bald. But he's been bald since he was in his 20s. And this song hit and I had to walk out of the room because it was just too hard to be in there. And I sat down outside of the conference room. And about 5 minutes later, Mr. Doug Ferrier comes walking out of the room and he was looking for me. And all he did was sit down right next to me and said, hey, Dave, what's up? And I just started talking and unloaded. And we sat there for 20 minutes and he put his arm over me. We both cried. And then I said something, I don't know, I thought was funny. I don't know if he thought it was funny, but he laughed anyways because that's who Doug is. He's such a beautiful soul. But it was such a powerful moment because I was able to let that moment out and talk about it with another man. And here are two grown men crying and some staff at the Gaylord came walking by and just looked, glanced down at us, and then picked up their pace and walked away. But it was an incredible moment because I was able to honor Joey in the moment and had somebody there that I deeply love and care about and admire. And every single time that Doug Ferrier agrees to come to the summit, I do a happy dance just like Ernest from Ernest Saves Christmas. Because Doug is my brother from up north in the Canadian territory, eh? And I am absolutely excited to welcome Doug Ferrier back for the sixth climb to the summit. And with that being said, Doug, the summit is yours.
Davey,
Okay.
bro, you did it to me last night. You did it to me in Nashville, and you've almost got the tears going again. I love you, brother. I really do, and I appreciate you so much. You know, that story right there, I get chills, goosebumps. My hairs are standing up on my arms, not on my head, obviously, because it just fills me with so much joy. And I want everybody to realize something. All I did was give David my presence. Sometimes that's all somebody needs is our presence. And that's the most incredible gift that we can give them. One of the things I love about this is David's mission is it's amazing and it's so profound, and I'll always be a part of this every chance I get. But I love the virtual events because all of us are here. Some of us are pretending that we're present, but we have 37 tabs open. Well, some others are wondering, I wonder if people know I'm wearing track pants. We all know one guy is. He always does. I decided to join him. I'm wearing track pants today too, but nobody can tell. Look, if you're here even halfway, that actually matters. It means something. It could be that you're here because you need that next step, or maybe you're here to support somebody, but it matters that you're here. This summit, when David told me the name of it, Ignite the Spark, man, it was telling me something really important. And it was that a lot of people, because I know David is listening to the people and he's talking and having conversations. So when he told me that name, I knew it meant that a lot of people, they're not really feeling lit up right now, not as much as they could be. And the thing is, it's not because you're lazy or because you lack motivation. It's because life happened. Sometimes life happens to all of us. You know, for some of us, we've lost someone. It was a partner, a parent, a friend. Maybe it was a business deal that went bad. Maybe it was a job. Or maybe it was a version of yourself that you thought you would always be. And sometimes that loss comes loudly. Sometimes it's real quiet. It can sit with you in the darkness when you're alone. There was a time in my life, and I want to touch, like, I heard Amber talking earlier, and Megan had made a comment about Amber, which was talking about her dad. And I want to share a little story about my dad with you because I can relate to them, and I'm sure others can relate. And maybe it wasn't your dad, maybe it was another family member or somebody else. But see, there was a time in my life when things weren't good on the outside, but they were improving. And then when I lost my dad, I didn't just lose a person, I lost direction, I lost certainty, I lost the version of me that existed before that moment. I was only 12 years old when I lost him. And then over time, and maybe you've done something similar, I started by hiding the problem first. I tried masking it any which way I could. First, started off with cigarettes, then it was into drugs, booze, anything I could. And then as I got older, I needed to be more responsible, so it became work. And I worked and worked and worked And then I built myself up. I started off as a laborer for a roofing company, worked all the way up to being a supervisor for the biggest company in Canada, and then started my own business. And for those of you that have heard my story, you know that in 2014, that business that I started, I would have been better off having a job working for somebody else because that business was failing. I was in the midst of my second divorce. Every relationship around me was failing. And I felt the weight of the entire world crushing me. It felt like the whole world was coming down on me. And I couldn't see a way out. So I tried. I tried to hustle more, tried to work harder, tried to replace that spark, the spark that was missing, with productivity, tried to replace it with busyness, with achievement. Like that job I had where I got to be a supervisor, six-figure salary at the time, it was the golden cup for me. I thought I had arrived. Turns out, though, hustle is a terrible grief counselor. What I didn't realize back then was simple. See, that spark, it doesn't die when we lose someone. It just goes quiet because it's waiting for permission. You heard Amber say it earlier. She was afraid of being successful because she was worried about her dad not recognizing her anymore. I've heard Michael talk about it before. He was afraid of success. And I don't want to take away from his story, but because of one of his boys. How many of us here hide our spark because we're afraid that somebody's not going to recognize us? Or that maybe now that they're gone, we don't deserve it? Maybe we're not going to work as hard towards it? See, the thing is, most of us, we think we're stuck because we need more motivation to get that spark back. That's wrong. You're stuck because you're trying to move forward while dragging an identity that no longer fits. Could you imagine trying to climb one of these mountains in David's backyard while dragging a fully loaded jumbo jet behind you uphill in 6 feet of snow, how our parents used to walk to school every day? Could you imagine trying to do that? That jumbo jet could resemble or it could mean that baggage that you're trying to carry. How much baggage are you trying to carry into the future with that old identity? Maybe it's time to put that baggage down. See that moment on the rooftop? I had anchors that pulled me back from the edge of that roof. That was a positive anchor. But we also have negative anchors. That jumbo jet full of luggage holding you down while you're trying to climb this mountain, that's a negative anchor. You don't need more fire. You just need fewer anchors pulling you back. One of the things I thought about, I spent a lot of time thinking about this when David told me the meaning behind this summit. And I thought, how can I deliver something so powerful that you can take with you, powerful and simple, that you can take with you every day? And it's there when you need it. And I thought about different things in my life that have made a difference, different mentors, coaches, different things that have really helped me. And I've shared this before, not a lot. One of the things I did, and I love acronyms, one of my acronyms is WIT. And I end every day with this in my mind: WIT, WIT. Now, it could be whatever it takes. Again, stay away from the hustle to be your grief counselor. But also for me, it's, did I live my day looking to gain and share wisdom? Because if we're not growing, we're decaying or dying. So, how can I obtain more wisdom to help me be a better person? How can I share that wisdom to help somebody that needs it? You're going to hear nuggets for the next 2 days. You're going to hear nuggets from everybody. They're going to be sharing their wisdom. And there's going to be a moment that sparks something inside you. The I, intentionality. Did I live my day with intention? Did I just coast through the day, being numb to everything, not really being aware? And T, thankful. Was I thankful today for the little moments? You know, the moments in here where we're having messages in the chat, the conversations we're having in this room. There's so much to be thankful in here. I'm thankful that I'm inside my house instead of outside in the freezing rain we're getting right now. Something so simple that we overlook. But you can't be thankful and depressed at the same time. But that's not the acronym I wanted to give you. That's an acronym that I love and I live every day. But the one I wanted for this was Spark. SPARK. And the S, I touched on this already. Stop carrying what you can't change. That baggage, put it down. The spark isn't going to ignite or get brighter while your hands are full of guilt or what ifs or regret. How are you going to carry that flame while you've got two suitcases over your shoulder that are dragging you down? So let me ask you this. What are you still carrying that no longer belongs to you? P, it's for permission to feel without fixing. Amber said this earlier. I was like, oh my God, we're like two minds connected. Grief doesn't need solutions. How often do we do this? When somebody is going through grief, we want to fix them, right? Grief doesn't need solutions. It needs space. There's no time frame on your healing process. It took me decades to get fully healed from the passing of my father. You don't heal by rushing forward. You heal by letting yourself be honest with where you're actually at. A is for align. Align with who you're becoming. You see, the old you had to survive that loss, but you didn't survive that loss. The old you, the old version of you. And that's not a tragedy. It's actually a transition. It's transition into the new version of you. Because sometimes we do have to transition after a loss. Growth, it often looks like confusion before it looks like clarity. R, it's for rituals over motivation. Look, motivation is like eating and bathing. It doesn't last, so it's recommended you do it frequently. Or it's like it disappears faster than your phone charger at the airport when you got 2% left on your battery and your flight's boarding. But rituals, they're how you can protect your spark. One question that you can ask yourself in the morning, a simple question. What would honoring my life today look like? What would you do today differently to honor your life? K, keep the spark alive through service. Everybody that's here speaking today, everybody that shares, or you go into your community and you do something for others, that's part of service. Your pain, David's mission here is a perfect example. Your pain didn't happen for nothing, but it won't mean anything unless you shape how you show up. And that spark, it grows when it's shared. We got a wildfire here that David's creating. I want to ask you to think about something. Write this down. And if you want, drop it in the chat. Feel free to, but feel free to keep it personal. What's something that you've been carrying for too long? When my dad passed away, I was 12 years old. He was diagnosed with cancer on my birthday. And 3 months later, he was gone. They put him in ICU overnight on life support. They brought the whole family in to say goodbye. And I've watched TV shows, I watch the movies, I understand what happens when you turn off the machines. The nurses and family explained it all to me. The machines are keeping him alive. His heart's going to stop. He's going to stop breathing. All that stuff. We've all heard it, right? And I go in there, 12-year-old boy, and I'm standing beside my superhero. My first superhero. It was not Superman. My dad was my first superhero. And I'm holding on to his hand. And I'm thinking, I'm 12 years old, right? The harder I squeeze, the more he's going to feel. He's going to feel that I need him to come back. I need him to fight just a little bit more. I need him to wake up and come back for me. And when they turned off the machines, first the heart rate started to decrease and flatlined, and the breathing stopped. But what none of these shows teach you, what the nurses didn't tell me, the doctors, my family, is that those machines also pump life into the muscles. As much as I was squeezing my dad's hand, there was some pressure coming back from him. When those machines turned off, I felt his hand open up and release. And for decades, I held on to that feeling, saying, my dad let go. It doesn't have to be that deep or that tragic, but what is something you're carrying for too long? Because I carried that for too long and I suffered because of it. I don't share because I want support. I don't want sympathy. I want you to understand that if you're carrying something like that, you don't have to. This is like a test. I have another question for you. What version of you is trying to emerge? You see, because we have this version of us that goes through that event, the version of us that we were before that event. But then we have to adapt our identity. We have to evolve. So, what version of you is trying to emerge to get to that next step? Then I ask you, and I implore you, what's one small ritual that you can start this week, today, tomorrow, to start working towards that? Could it be asking yourself that question in the morning? What would honoring my life look like today? Maybe that's too deep for you right now. Maybe you can start with what's one thing I'm grateful for, two things, three things. You see, to make this progress, you don't need a massive life overhaul. You just need one honest step. You don't need to see the whole staircase to climb. If you went to the Eiffel Tower or the CN Tower here in Toronto, if you were to climb the stairs, would you say, oh, I can't see the top step, so I'm not going to start? You've got to start. This stuff here, this is the type of work that I do every day. I started by doing it myself. I do it every day with high performers, business owners, parents, and leaders. People who look fine, but they know something more is possible. That was me. I looked fine on the outside. I had this great ability to put on this mask and this persona that everybody thought I was doing fine. But inside, I was dying inside. I didn't need fixing. And if you're grieving, you don't need fixing. Maybe what you need is some help to let go of what's dimming your spark, to put down that baggage. Letting go, that baggage, letting go of it, it isn't quitting. It's choosing to stop carrying what's keeping you stuck. If something in you stirred today, whether it's from me talking or somebody else or it stirs tomorrow, trust that feeling. That's your spark waking up again. You don't need to wait for the right moment. You don't need to become someone else first. If you look on your calendar, there's no day today or someday. If you look on your clock, there's no time sometime. So the time isn't someday. The time isn't when you feel ready. The time is now. David, I appreciate you, brother. And I appreciate everybody here. You are so amazing and wonderful.
And we appreciate you, bro. Look at you bringing the power from Canada. I say this every summit. I need to make it up to Canada. I haven't been there since honestly 2018. So
You're not missing much. It's cold up here.
I'll wait till the summer. I mean, it's been weird here in Colorado. We maybe had two snowstorms and one time down below zero. So that's unusual for us. But dude, brother, homeboy, home slice, that was incredible. Um, you know, it's not a Mountain Summit virtual if Doug Ferrier is not a part of it. And absolutely love your heart, love what you brought to the mountain. And I know if my life got changed because of you, my heart got shifted this summit, I'm sure there are others in the VIP room and also on Facebook that got shifted as well. And we're going to shift some things up this time instead of me asking the first question, because I always like being the first one on anything, but I'll be nice this time on this summit. And I can already see that Miss Rossman has taken her mute off. And so we're going to kick it over to Deb. What do you got for us?
First and foremost, Doug, oh, love you. So much love for you. Thank you for taking us through that, and your use of acronyms is astounding. I'm loving all of it. And the very first thing was the very first thing that David talked about, and you leaned into. All I did was give him my presence. Well, that is a present, that is a gift. And it is one of the most powerful things as fellow human beings on this rock that's orbiting through the universe can do for each other, particularly in the grief space. And David, thank you again so much for creating such a safe space for us to learn from each other, shore each other up, and just soak in the vibes. I next jotted down, life happens, your notation about life happening, and maybe it doesn't seem like people are as available or whatever. And it just made me think that, we are in particularly challenging times, which, where we're being bombarded day in and day out with horrific truths, which makes the being present all the more powerful. And thank you for your presence. Then I went on, and you were talking about, sharing that you were just at 12, you were just a baby. You can look back at that now and realize, you were just a baby, and to have that relationship abruptly end. And a link that's going through with a lot of the speakers, the identity of your 12-year-old self and the loss of that and how it affected you. And then, of course, the story of the day that the machines were unplugged, and what a rude life can be, so rude. That was a tremendous disappointment for a 12-year-old boy. And I'm so sorry. Okay. That's on your behalf. And I was curious that, one of the things that I really wanted to touch on before I wrap up was you took us to, this horrific thing happened at such a tender age. And then you ended up doing some of the things, right? Some of the self-soothing, self-medicating things And I really appreciate that you morphed it into, and then I had to grow up, and so worked. And and you conveyed it, but I just wanted to reiterate how a lot of people I think don't recognize work as being an addiction, can be an addiction, can be a way to mask. Because my question to you was, it sounds like you compartmentalized the the real
Very
work
much.
of the grief, right? Because you were too young and yeah. And and clearly now, you're doing the work or have done the work. And at what point was there an impetus to that you recognize, you know, was it the failed marriages, the failed businesses, where the common denominator was you? Yeah. What was there a tipping point that you remember and can point to as this is when I recognized I needed to do that grief work?
Yep. I'll answer that first. That was November 2014. When I stood on the edge of that roof. It was in the midst of my second divorce. After my divorce, actually the process was going. I ended up getting back together with my high school sweetheart. That relationship ended terribly. There's, I have a whole story for that, but it was just, I realized that I needed to do healing at that point. And I realized that all this stuff was happening. There's one common denominator for everything going wrong in my life, and that was me. Um, I want to go back to the beginning of what you said, because when you said, I was like, oh, maybe I delivered that message wrong. When I said all I did was give Dave my presence, and I know how powerful presence is and how important that is, but it's a simple thing we can do. So something that we can do for others that is easy to do, but it means the world. It's the best gift you can give somebody, especially in a moment like that. Thank you very much, Deb.
Thank you, Doug. What do you got, Megan?
Thanks, Doug, for everything. Uh, One of the most relatable things you talked about for me is how we often carry so much that we can't control and we need to let go of, and how that can affect us, especially when we don't realize like that we're carrying it, um, and that we're try to not let people see that. And I guess my question for you is, like, we get to that point that's that like too much point that we need, that we don't want to get to that point. But I guess kind of like with you and Dave when you first met, do you have any advice or whatever for how can we see if like we if there's a friend who is getting to that point? Do you have any advice for how can we help someone else who is getting that to that point?
So the biggest thing that a friend needs is space until they're ready. If Dave wasn't ready and I walked over and I got in his space, he wouldn't have been able to receive it. Um, and if you ever get to that place yourself, I can count 20 people, sorry, 19 people on the screen right now. That goes for everybody in here. There's 19 people on this screen that I'm sure would be available for a call. When your friend gets to that point, you can offer to be there for them. You can let them know that you're there. But the reality is, until they're ready, they're not going to take that step. But if they know that you're there for them without judgment, with an open and honest heart, when they're ready, they're going to be there for you. And sometimes sharing your story, the stuff that you've gone through, can help give them the courage to own their stuff.
Thank you very, very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I would second that, Megan. you don't want to push and push and push and push because you'll push them further away unless they're ready. So thank you for that, Doug. And thank you, Megan, and thank you, Deb. Before we move into our next speaker, is there anybody else that has anything for Mr. Ferrier? All right. Doug, you know, brother, how much I care about and love you, bro. Thank you for being with us for your sixth climb to the summit.
Six already.
Yeah, this is our sixth one.
You're amazing, Dave.
Thank you. Thank you for supporting the movement and being with us, and always your willingness to jump in, especially when you had to play paramedic when somebody stabbed himself accidentally. You
I might
know,
have to make that one of my next talks.
yeah, I think I'll tell you about the theme, but I'm not going to drop that yet. But we do have another one in the works coming up, and I appreciate everything about you, bro. Looking forward to seeing you down, down the road here in 2026, and stick with us as long as you can. Appreciate you, man, and thank you for bringing the heat like you always do.